Here are some alignment tips for Utkatasana, or fierce pose. Charlie, you're blocking my video. When we sit back, we want to aim for the same angle in the hips, knees, and ankles. Arms in line with the ears. Spine neutral. A few things that I see students struggle with is not being able to bend the knees enough, and so the pose comes a lot from the hip flexion, which ends up making it more like a half fold. And a lot of times the reason for this is because the calves are tight, because when you start to bend the knees enough to match the angle in the hips, the ankles have to flex quite a bit more. And if the calves are tight, they're keeping the ankles from being able to flex enough. A couple things I see students struggle with in the spine in this pose is when the arms reach up, they tend to hunch the back quite a bit. So extend the thoracic spine. And if we see too much flexion in the spine, a lot of times it'll come from tight hamstrings, because this space between the bottom of the butt cheek and the back of the knees needs to lengthen in order to keep the spine neutral. If the hamstrings are tight, they're going to pull the tail under to shorten this space here. From the front, we want the big toes together. We want the inner ankles a little bit apart, not touching. And when we start to sit back, try to prevent the ankles from pronating or supinating. So when they pronate, that's when you see the arch collapse and the inner ankles touch. And when they supinate too much, that's when you start to see the knees separate and people are kind of resting toward the outsides of the feet. So ball the big toe down, inner knees lightly touching, weight even across all 10 toes and the heels. I've known several students who don't feel comfortable with their feet all the way together, so they prefer to take Utkatasana with a wider stance, and that's fine. When you sit back, make sure that the knees don't buckle in. So aim for the hips to only flex, not adduct or abduct. So the knees are in line with the ankles. If you look down, you'll see the knees lined up with the second or third toe. There's a technique I like to offer in my classes in Utkatasana to help students get a stronger awareness of their glute muscles. When you're down in the pose, keep the knees lightly touching and then engage the muscles that you would use to separate the knees. So without actually bringing the knees apart, just engage the muscles that you would use to do so. You should feel your butt cheeks working. Your glutes are contracting there. If the knees are slamming together, the glutes are usually fairly relaxed. The knees are just lightly touching, and there's an isometric contraction to pull the knees apart.